Yo guys, welcome back to another banger tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to use this insane 3D transition effect for your Fortnite montages. By the end of this video, you're going to know how to use content aware fill, animate in the graph editor so that things are super smooth in After Effects, and how to use Photoshop if you want to, along with some amazing tips and tricks. So let's get straight into it and show you guys this insane effect. Alright guys, I'm in a new After Effects project and let's check out this insane effect that we just cooked up. And even if you're new to After Effects or you don't use After Effects, you can do something similar if you know Photoshop, and I highly recommend you stick around to check it out. So let's watch this. So as you can see, it's a sick 3D transition. So let's open up this project or this composition, and I'm just gonna delete everything that we have here. I'm gonna turn this preview resolution to half. So all I have here is the first clip plays and then it goes to a black space and then it stays there for a while and then it goes back to the clip. So it's during this empty spot that we want the transition to happen. So it's super simple. I'm gonna show you guys exactly how to do it. So what we need to do is freeze the last frame of the first clip and the first frame of the second clip. So I'm just gonna go to this last frame and duplicate this first clip. I'm gonna call it clip 1 freeze. And then click U to open up the timer map markers. So we just have a frozen point in time here. I'm gonna right click, go to time and freeze frame. So as you can see, that changes it and it looks weird. So that's because it's synced. So when I freeze it, it's freezing a different point in time. And to fix that, we're just gonna copy that point in time. So Control C, this timer map keyframe, and then Control V for later. And then we're gonna go back to that first one, click Alt left bracket to cut it, and Alt right bracket to cut it, and we're just gonna have this spread over this empty background area. Now since this is easy eased, it might like mess around in the graph editor for you, like it might do something like this. So just make sure they're not easy eased by selecting them and click Control and click. So now they're just linear keyframes. And great, so now we're all set up. We just gotta separate this layer into 2 layers, one of an empty background and one of just the character roto. Now you can do that in Photoshop or After Effects. I'm gonna show you how to do it in Photoshop, and if you wanna do it in After Effects, I'll do it super quickly just so you can see how it's done. Also guys, if you have not subscribed yet, and if you haven't liked the video, please consider doing so because it helps out so much. So we need to save this frame. If you have Effects Console, you can Control Space and then save the frame and then bring that into Photoshop. Or you can Control Alt S or go to Composition in the top, save frame as file. So let's just save this frame and then open up Photoshop. So I'm gonna just export that and then open up Photoshop. I just brought that frame into Photoshop. Now if you're not familiar with Photoshop, don't worry. I know it might be intimidating, but I swear it's super simple. So to get the roto layer, let's click W to take out our selection and then select subject. Now that did a pretty good job. I'm just going to clear it up a little bit by holding Alt and then clearing up any empty space. So we got that selection. I'm going to click Control J to separate it. So if we turn off this background layer, we have a pretty good roto. So I'm going to go to File and quick export that. And then I'm going to bring that into After Effects. So I got that. Let's put it on top and let's go back into Photoshop and do the content aware. So I'm just going to grab this polygonal lasso tool and then select around my subject. Once you have that selection, you can Shift Delete content aware, and that should do pretty well. And that looks pretty good. So then we'll go to File and export that as well. So go quick export, and then I'm gonna go back into After Effects and bring that filled background into our composition. So we got those 2 layers on top of each other. So see, this looks pretty good. Now we want to put the roto layer on top. So I'm going to rename these just so it's organized. Roto and empty background. So the top layer is the roto and the bottom layer is the empty background. Now we can just get rid of the original freeze frame, and this looks pretty good. So great. So now the clip plays and then it pauses and then it goes back into this. So now we just need to do the same thing but with the first frame of this clip. So I'm going to duplicate this and go to right click, time, and freeze frame. So now we just need to separate the layers like we did earlier, and I'm going to show you guys how to do this in After Effects. Click G and take out your pen tool and just mask around the character, and then in order to content aware it, there's a really easy way to do it, is to just mask a really rough mask around the subject, just like this. Doesn't have to be anything too crazy. And then once you have that mask, I'm gonna solo that layer, click M to take out my mask properties, and set this mask to subtract. And then if I go to window and make sure my content aware fill is enabled, then I can go to content aware panel and click B and N to make sure that this is the frame that I want to content aware. And then it'll only look at this as your work area. And then if you have your range, work area, fill method object, you can generate a fill layer and then right click that, freeze frame it, and then we have a filled empty background. So that's a pretty cool way to do it. I'm gonna do it the Photoshop method just because it's a little safer, but this also totally works. So I'm gonna delete this mask and set B and N as my in point and out point of the composition again real quick. And let's replace this freeze frame layer with our 2 layers. So I just went into Photoshop and got those fill and roto layers, and I just renamed them, put them into the composition. We got roto 2 and fill 2. So I'm gonna rename them real quick. So it's a roto 2 layer and then fill 2 layer. So if I rename these, now we are all set to go. We did all the hard stuff. Now we just get to do the fun part of animating it. So I have my core layers stacked, and now we can just get into animating it. So the first thing I want to do is make them 3D layers. And this is optional. I just think it works a little bit better. And you could also do it with scale. I'm just gonna do it this way, and you can execute it differently if you want to. So let's mess with the second roto layers a little bit later. I'm just gonna slide those later and not worry about them for a second. And let's click P on this empty background 2, and we're gonna go a little bit later and set the Z position to like 1500. And then I'm gonna set that keyframe. I might adjust these keyframes later, but that's what I wanna do. And then I'm gonna click F9 to easy ease them, go into the graph editor, and let's go into the speed graph. And we're just gonna put it to the left for some influence to the left side, so it just kind of comes out like this. I think that animation could be a little quicker. I'm gonna drag that second keyframe a little more to the left to make it faster, and then I'm gonna right click in some empty space, go to new null object. Now null object doesn't do anything, but if you have a layer parented to it and that null object is doing things, then it's gonna start acting depending on what that null object does. So if that doesn't make sense, don't worry, it'll make perfect sense. I'm gonna make that null object a 3D layer by clicking that little box, and I'm gonna grab that pick whip tool and parent it to the null. So drag that onto the null, and now if I click P on the null and set a keyframe, and I move it to the left and then start animating it, then I have control over this layer without making, you know, a new keyframe. So Control Z, and let's set that other keyframe to make it go off screen so we can kind of transition out of that frame. I'm going to drag that second keyframe to the end and that first one to the beginning, and then it's all about the easy ease, guys, so watch carefully. If I select these and put that easy ease to peak at the middle like this, and if you guys are new to After Effects, you're doing great. We're almost done. This is super simple little easy ease graph that I want to do here just to make it look smoother. So just pay pretty close attention to this. We're gonna make the speed graph peak right there, and note where that peaks. I'm gonna cut off the ends by Alt left bracket and Alt right bracket, and when that is starting to peak, I want to drag this layer, and remember the Z depth is at, or the Z position is at 1500, so I have to put that a little back in space since it's a 3D layer. So we want the position to end about here. So I'm gonna set a keyframe, and remember it's at 1500 in Z depth. So I'm gonna put it off to the left, off of the screen, and now it'll like transition in. So let's look at the null object and how it's controlling this layer. So see how it's pushing it off screen after it's done animating out? That's because of the easy ease. So if we go to that peak where it's going really fast, then we can set this keyframe to kind of start. So I'm gonna go to this beginning keyframe where it's off the frame and it's animating in. I'm gonna click F9 on that and F9 on the other one as well. And then I wanna do similar to what we did with this first animation. If I look at that graph, see how it's really fast and then slow? I wanna do a very similar thing. So I'm gonna select those, go go into the graph editor and push it all the way to the left. So as that is going out, this one's coming in, and then it looks much smoother. So let's see how this is coming along, and if we need to, we can adjust the duration. That looks really smooth. And we're pretty much done. Look at this. See how it's not just scaling down, it's actually going back in 3D space. That's why I like to use Z position, so that if I want to put in any extra 3D sauce to it, then I can have full control over the fact that they're actually 3D layers. So now I want to put in that roto of the second character, and I'm just going to jump cut it. So I'm going to start that layer right here, because that's when the layers start to switch. Since these are easy easing really fast right here, since the background layers are going in a transition, I'm just going to start that keyframe. So now as these easy ease by each other, I'm going to cut the skin. So I'm going to Control Shift D and delete that first roto layer so that it just switches skins. And then that's pretty great. Now what I can do is just scale up this background, and we should be totally fine. So let's animate the scale. Let's set a keyframe for a little bit before, and then drag it towards the screen. So that, let's go to this frame and just scale it up. Let's drag this keyframe over here, and we just want to scale it up so that it fits the screen. So see how the edges are covering everything up? That should look good. And then I'll Alt right bracket, and I'm gonna easy ease those, select those and F9 them, and I want it to go at the very end, so it peaks at the transition. Now I never deleted this random freeze frame, so I'm just gonna delete that layer because that was when I originally duplicated the clip to freeze frame it. So now let's look at what it looks like. So that's a really smooth transition. I can even put that scale keyframe earlier and add extra ease to it. So if I right click and go to the value graph and drag this handle all the way down, it's gonna go super slow and then scale up fast at the end. So let's check that out. Wow, okay, this is looking super smooth. Now, if you want to add a little bit of extra 3D parallax, a little dimension, then we can add some Z position animation to this roto layer. So if I just have her come closer to the camera, it might look cool since the background is going away to have this come closer. So I'm gonna select those keyframes and just F9 them. So just a simple animation to add some extra parallax, and I'm gonna go to the speed graph, move it a little bit to the left, and that should look pretty cool. Now that looks terrible. Let's move it a little more to the left, like that. Now that looks cool. The thing is, we gotta do it exactly the same thing with the other roto, because this is not closer to the camera, but this roto is. So I'm gonna set a keyframe for that and make sure that Z position copy and paste so that we can have the same Z position. And I'm gonna do it an F9 on both those keyframes, select those, F9 them, and then bring that all the way to the right, and let's check it out. So that is a really smooth transition. Now I'm just gonna Alt right bracket and Alt right bracket, and now that we have that finished, all we need to do is add some extra twitch and some overlays. If you want to know how to use overlays to make this even better, click on the top right link, because I show you guys exactly how to use overlays to make your edits better. Now if you guys do this effect, I would love to see it, so finish it off with some glows, effects, and shakes, and this is what you can get. Guys, I hope this tutorial was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions or comments or things that I missed over. And if you want to see tutorials for certain things, please let me know in the comments. I love you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and stay comfy, stay cozy, and stay hydrated. Peace. My links are in the description.